Jessie, thank you very much for coming on to the show previously known as the Feeney Files. I'm going through my mail trying to find the letter from Stephen where he advises me that I need a co-star to rescue the ratings of this program, but I can't find it. It's like he never mentioned it. I just arrived on set and the show had been completely rebranded. It's humiliating.
David, you'll find that email in amongst all the run sheets that I send you that you never read.
Do you send out run sheets?
Yeah, I do actually. Hey, Social Democrats. You heard correctly. Jessie McCrone is now joining the monthly Feeney Files. David may complain, but these episodes are going to need a new name. So if you've got any great ideas, please message us on Patreon or one of our social media channels to come up with a new name other than the Feeney Files with Jessie McCrone. This month, as with every month, we'll be tracking the latest movements across Australian politics, as well as some of the top stories from home and abroad. Plus, I'll give David and Jessie a chance to rant on a subject of their choosing, a choice that we all may regret at some stage. And finally, one more quick announcement. We are in the process of organising to host a live show in Hobart in the week beginning July the 7th. We're still working out the details, including the actual date. But if you do live in the Apple Isle and want to come and join us for a live recording in the lead up to the Tasmanian state election, we'd love to see you there. So just look out for more information about that in the coming days. All right, enough chit chat. Let's get into this week's episode. After a word from our sponsors. The presenting sponsor for Socially Democratic is Dunn Street. Dunn Street is a campaign agency that specialises in community organising. We only work with people who want to build power to make the world a better place. And if you want to create change in 2025, then hit us up at dunnstreet.com.au. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members as well. And you can join our community for free or for as little as $1.50 a month. And you too can help support this podcast. All paid members receive a welcome gift. So if you have recently signed up, please check your inbox for a message from our producer asking for your shipping address, because without that, then we can't send you your merch. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. Maurice Blackburn has been fighting for workers' rights in Australia for more than 100 years. They believe the law should serve everyone and not just those that can afford it. So for empathetic and expert legal support, call Maurice Blackburn Lawyers today. We are taping this one on a Tuesday lunchtime on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. And it's almost the end of basically it's the end of the month. And that means it's our time for our monthly return of the Feeney Files. And just like that, early episode of 30 Rock, in which the fictional TV show that they were running was called The Girly Show, but Tracy Jordan was upset that his name wasn't in the title. I feel like we're going to call it The Feeney Files with Jessie McCrone.
Well, we haven't discussed names yet. I feel that needs to be a much longer discussion.
Yeah. What about the Feeney Files and guest? And that way we keep the flexibility, Stephen, of rotating, interesting people in with Jessie. I was on the phone to my union the other night discussing with them how my employment arrangements with your podcast had been changed without consultation.
Your workload has been halved and the pay has not changed.
And let me guess, you haven't heard from an organiser in, how many years?
I guess the market research showed you that I was more interesting when Jessie was appearing with me. But I wonder if we could test how the show would go if it was just Jessie and I.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so listen, I'm gonna power through this humiliation of becoming a guest on my own show.
Okay, you got that out of your system?
Well, at least for the first 10 minutes of the show, I'm going to keep this is a theme we're going to return to.
Well, if there is one thing that we'll learn about David Feeney, his humour, he loves a good callback gag.
That's it.
I once wore a checkered green and white gingham shirt to work once when I worked for David. he said to me, "Why are you working part-time at McDonald's?" And every time I wore that shirt, every time I walked back in the office, he said, "Oh, the Macca's boy's back."
I knew I'd put you on the lowest possible pay rate I could, but I wasn't expecting you to go part-time.
I was getting junior rates. All right, let's do this. Lots to talk about in the last month, starting with I'm kind of going in chronology and burying the lead, which is Iran, because I know if we start with Iran, it'll just become the Iran episode. So we will do that at the end. But Dorinda Cox announced a shock defection to the Labor Party. Jessie, I want to get your thoughts on this, first of all.
You're going to her first.
Yeah, I am. That's retribution. You got a good opening crack. All we've heard, I only just heard Jessie laugh the whole time. I actually haven't heard her say anything yet. Do you like this move by the Labor Party in the Federal Parliamentary Caucus taking in a Greens senator?
Okay, so you said at the start there's a lot that's happened over the last month in Australian politics. I don't know that that's necessarily a fair characterisation of what has happened since the election. There's been a lot of discussion about the election, a lot of analysis of the election, and the Prime Minister's gone to the Vatican and he's also sort of said, we'll get back to Parliament when we're ready for it. He's taking a very relaxed and comfortable approach to this new government. I think it's not a bad thing. I think people are kind of keen for politics to get out of their face. The one thing that they have done that has really cut through, though, is poach a Green senator. I do have question marks about this. I looked at it and I thought, but this doesn't mean we have all the numbers in the Senate. So this is just a big risk to take with, from my view, very little upside. I think it's great that she's finally worked out the Greens is not the place to make change, and I think that Dorinda's comments around that, like, I agreed with everything she said. I do think that this is a lot of risk for the Labor Party to take on, where we could have perhaps put her in the crossbench for 12 months. You know, see how she went before taking her into our caucus. I do know conversations have been happening with her for some time. I am nervous about it. I hope I am wrong. I hope this all works out brilliantly. I think we've previously seen MPs that cross into other parties or the crossbench. It's always gone brilliantly. So I worry.
Before I go to you, David, Jessie,
take your time, mate.
I was reminiscing about a story. We were talking about past defectors to the Labor Party over the years and how they've worked out. And the one I reminisce the most about was Cheryl Kernow's defection. And it happened at the time when I was still in Young Labor, and we had a Young Labor parliamentary tour at State Parliament going on, and Rob Hulls was the person that was giving us the sort of the tour of Parliament, and there was like a moment for question time, and someone asked, Mr. Hulls, what do you think about Cheryl Kernow defecting from the Democrats to the Labor Party? And he said, well, put it this way, fellas, if she was in a trench, I wouldn't give her a fucking gun. To a stunned room. And obviously we saw her performance on election night when she thought she lost the seat of Dixon. Anyway, David, what are your thoughts about, you're a former senator, would you have taken Dorinda Cox into the caucus?
For sure. And as I chuckled a moment ago, Senator Karma, this is payback. After the election, as I was sort of sifting through all the various analysis of the results, I discovered a podcast called Serious Danger with Emerald Moon and Tom Ballard. Tom Ballard, you might know, is someone who has pioneered a career as being a comedian who's not funny. And as far as I can tell, has got by in life on a retainer from the ABC. But this is a cheer squad podcast for the Greens. And if you want to watch Green Pain live, I commend it to you. So after watching a couple of episodes, just to sort of indulge and in their pain and grief, in what is clearly a sort of borderline psychotic behaviour on my part, I stumbled across the podcast they did in the immediate aftermath of Senator Karma's defection, and they went bananas.
So you're happy with this as psychological warfare?
Vitriolic. They were vitriolic. They were angry, like all of they tried to, they turned themselves into rubber people by trying to explain how this was completely different to other defections. because as opposed to Labor defections out of the Labor Party, this was a defection to the Labor Party, and that makes it completely different. And so different rules should apply. And it was just nonsensical, but they were so angry. And one of the things I particularly enjoyed was that when this podcast, Serious Danger, launched, their very first guest was Senator Calmer. So she was the one she was their very first guest, and here she was bookending the career of this short-lived catastrophic podcast by defecting to Labor. I thought it was really interesting watching how they the Greens and other crossbenchers tried to sort of insist that the rules were different and she should resign. They called on her to resign and that she was elected and she was sitting in the Senate on stolen votes, all rhetoric us good Labor folk are familiar with. But suddenly there it was. They had to live their own values and they couldn't. And for our part, I think it's another interesting demonstration of how this too good to be true Greens party can't hang on to Indigenous members. This is their second and last Indigenous MP to defect from their ranks, again with commentary around the fact that the party has got sort of serious issues of race and diversity that bedevil its internals, notwithstanding their outward-facing rhetoric. So another body blow to the Greens, and that alone made it worth it.
But did she need to come to the Labor Party for it to be a body blow?
Well, I guess if a senator wants to join the oldest and most serious political party...
Rejoin.
Oh, that's true. Yes, good point. Then who are we to stand in her way?
Well, we're the national executive who waved it through.
Being a sort of a Labor fellow, I'm a little uncomfortable with the fact that she's sitting in the Senate on stolen votes, but this is how I think about it. She's sitting in the Senate on stolen votes that we've stolen back from Senator Payman, who stole the other votes. So it actually comes out even, Labor voters in Western Australia. You've got the number of senators you've duly elected, perhaps just not in the order that you expected.
I think the WA Labor Party would be very thrilled that they've already done their state election. I think demonstrating proximity to the Greens, I don't think is a vote winner in WA.
No, sure. But I don't think this senator is demonstrating proximity to the Greens anymore. And listen, if you spend 5 minutes listening to wannabe comedian Tom Ballard, it'll be very clear to you that there is no such proximity.
I'll tell you what, she managed to get her ALP membership processed a hell of a lot quicker than most people in Victoria over the last 10 years, that's for sure. She didn't get sit in disputes for like 6 months. So there's one thing, there's progress on that front.
I think the WA branch has become a lot more efficient at processing memberships since over 60% of their members are now members of the state parliament.
Indeed. Clare O'Neil said during the last month there are too many obstacles to building new homes, and has sort of come out and said that we need to cut a lot of the red tape around home construction of homes in the next term. David, Labor can't afford to stuff this up. Otherwise, we'll end up looking like the Jacinda Ardern government with a big Kiwi Build project that built 3 homes. And obviously she's recognised that as well. How important is it Labor gets this right? I just want to get your thoughts on this sort of commentary from Minister O'Neil around red tape and home ownership and home building.
Well, as a former owner-builder and as someone currently embarked on the challenge of building a house, I would caution the minister on this issue because I'm not sure her or a team of hers or Jesus Christ can fix this problem. It is because it's rooted in so many different aspects. I mean, just as a sort of a quick survey, in terms of red tape, there's obviously a whole lot of red tape that comes out of councils and the different capacity different councils have to manage their planning and manage their estate. Then there is state government overlay and the various rules there. Then there's the building industry, which, is bedeviled with all sorts of challenges, not the least of which is the issues around the CFMEU, but the chronic shortage of labour, which has led to spiralling costs. The average residential build now, 60% of the cost is labour, and that's not even contemplating the fact that supplies, I think prices have stabilised now, but went up dramatically during and in the immediate aftermath of COVID. And then we have state governments that have all piled into infrastructure, putting even greater pressure on a labour pool that is way too small. And then we have a tax system which encourages everybody's money to go into property. And you put all of this together, and what have you got? You've got far too few people trying to build far too many houses in an environment where costs are constantly spiralling, and councils are slowing things down and making things more expensive. And the challenge for policymakers at all levels and of all colours is all of these problems are interconnected. It's a Gordian's knot, and nobody, at least since 2019, has tried to cut the Gordian's knot.
Jessie, you're nodding furiously. You once worked in state government as well, and I think one of the comments from Minister O'Neil during the week was sort of aimed at both local council and state governments to kind of help in this process of unknotting this knot that David talks about. What are your thoughts?
David has greatly admired the problem, and I think that's important that we understand what the problem is.
I've poured money into the problem.
Look, the first thing, can I say, I'm very pleased that the new book that everyone in the Labor movement is reading, Abundance, is a lot shorter than when Capital flew through the ranks of the Labor Party, that everyone needed to read Tom Piketty's book, and it was super thick, and Abundance is a lot shorter. And I do feel that we will see a fair bit of this book by Ezra Klein permeating through the policy ranks of the Labor movement over the next couple of years. And I do think a fair bit of Claire's messaging around this is in keeping with Abundance. The idea there is that well-meaning policymakers for a long time have added layer upon layer of protections, like environmental protections, social procurement rules, those sort of things that the Labor movement have been very supportive of, that have actually constricted supply, and therefore things that the people we look after and support, like housing, have become more and more constrained because of our well-meaning sort of regulations. I think it'll be interesting when these two sort of ideas of the movement clash into each other and we end up with some proper fights about what the way forward is. I think that the challenge, as David points out, is this is a real mishmash of policy layers, and most of it is controlled at a council level. I know that different state governments have gone different paths to try and sort of break that nexus between local council and planning rules. I think there's a bunch of reasons planning should be taken of local councils. One of those is the absolute corruption that seems to be rife in some of these councils when they can get into bed with developers. So I think taking those powers off state councils would help.
With a complete absence of scrutiny, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. No scrutiny at all.
There's no press gallery keeping an eye on the local council.
No, not at all. And most people don't know who the councillors are. So one, I think that there is some from good reasons for taking planning off councils already. I think there have been strides made after there was a national cabinet agreement around 1 million homes. For instance, Victoria has it seems so small. Victoria built 15,000 homes in the last year. That is actually ahead of every other state, and that is after a weight of energy and time has gone into trying to lift up how many homes are built in this state. New South Wales was next with about 1,400. Given they are a bigger state, that is concerning that they've only got to 14,000. I think the challenge will actually be having the fights with councils and having the fights with those NIMBYs who don't want developers to build homes in their backyard. And that's going to be the ongoing fight. I think that it's been picked in Victoria. The Liberal Party have picked the side of their constituents, of places like Toorak, of places like Bayside sort of councils where the people don't want overdevelopment. And I think it's going to be a generational fight that plays out. I think that Labor is right to start this messaging. I do think it's going to be hard without tax reform, and I suspect that's going to lead us into some of Jim Chalmers' positioning over the last couple of weeks. But I also think that it is not going to be properly possible, unless we let go of this idea that the property is where all of the wealth that you have should go. And that means accepting that houses are going to have to lose value. And it also means accepting that there are a bunch of older people who have put their life savings into a home and spent years paying it off will find that they are poorer at the end of it. And until policymakers kind of make the switch and decide we're picking the group that don't have homes, I think that David's right. Like 2019 was the closest we sort of came to unpicking that challenge.
I think there's a conspiracy of silence at the federal level too, and there has been since 2019. One thing both sides of politics agree on is that the housing challenges are are a problem for another tier of government.
Yeah.
So both Liberal and Labor have learnt their lessons from 2019 and aren't going to talk about negative gearing or tax reform. They're both just going to talk about the supply side, because the electorate, galvanised by a primitive and sensationalist media, just punished them so badly in 2019 over negative gearing that people are sort of frightened to touch that radioactive issue again. And so both sides federally agree that it must be a problem that is entirely supply side, and it isn't. And I mean, I remember Liberty and I, when we finished our home some years ago, just thinking wonderingly how amazing it is that anything gets built at all, because it was so challenging. And the cost is just, I mean, building 1 million homes, multiply each one by 1.5 million. The cost of building is insane. And this really hits you, I think, when you travel overseas. And you realise that, the average Melbourne or Sydney dwelling can buy you a chateau in France or a small village in Sicily. Like in other parts of the world where they haven't driven all of their investment dollars into the property sector, and they haven't and they're not continuing to drive giant infrastructure projects that keep a labour force under constant pressure and able to constantly elevate the cost of supplies and labour. It's a different universe, and we have to reach for that different universe.
Yeah, and particularly the part in France where property values are not changing. Well, they are. They're growing a bit. They're not growing like they do in Australia. And you watch when property prices start dropping, and they have in Victoria, that there is a drop in prices, everyone will squeal.
Well, the last data I saw had prices on the march again.
Well, okay, so that's a good segue into then what Jim Chalmers has been hinting at in the last week or so about tax reform or broad-based economic reform. And he had an address to the National Press Club recently and kind of opened the conversation. And I guess the main theme out of it was we've got a big fat majority and we're going to be a little bit more bold when it comes to economic reform in this term. I was hinting at tax reforms. He wasn't going to do the whole ruling this in and ruling that out. But I want to get your thoughts, David, on the remarks from the Treasurer at the National Press Club and what do you take from what he said?
I did watch the speech and I thought it was a very refreshing speech. And I think it's interesting to note how well received the speech was by most commentators, and Patricia Cavalis from the ABC was positively energised by it. I think some interesting points. Firstly, his remarks to the media about the gotcha questions were which were sort of very diplomatically landed. Nonetheless, I thought made the point to the press that if you're going to have a policy conversation in this country, which explores and stress tests where public policy might go, then the media, can't club it to death like a baby seal in search of a screaming sensationalist headline. You can't have a proper conversation about tax reform if you can be utterly confident that News Limited is going to race out the next day with a scare campaign about death taxes or whatever it is. And he's absolutely right. And this was one of those moments where the journalists all nodded sagely and agreed. And I look forward to them all demonstrating what a faithless bunch they are when they come out with their
editors.
headlines.
They will.
Oh, it'll be the editor's fault, yeah. But nonetheless, I thought that was a good warning sign, because it was an indication, I think, that there is an appetite for serious conversations that test the boundaries of, the Overton window of where we are now, which is there's so much tax reform you're just not allowed to mention for fear of the scare campaign. His emphasis was on productivity, and the commentators and the economists like that. That's interesting because productivity is not sexy, and is sometimes taken as a code word for decisions that are difficult. But we have got a productivity stagnation in this country, and it's been with us for quite some time. So good that the government uses the sort of blue sky that's ahead of it to tackle some of these policy questions, which, if it's done well, would realise the sort of economic fruits that could make this a long-term Labor government, much like Hawke and Keating did in yesteryear. So I thought it was a good speech, and it does, I think, set a tone for a government that has got a bigger appetite for change, but it was delivered in a prudent style, and it signalled that it was going to be collaborative, that there were going to be stakeholders brought in, conversations held, conferences had, that it wasn't going to be a policy Pearl Harbor where Labor zeros come screaming out of the sun and bomb the Herald Sun with a whole lot of new ideas. So the temperature was good, and I think we can all be a little bit optimistic about what it signals for this government.
Jesse, do you want to explain the military metaphor behind Pearl Harbor?
No, look, I would like to echo my optimism about the speech. I think, having not watched it and only read elements of it, I would say that I take a slightly more cynical view of how, well, the audience that I took from it was a bunch of people who jumped up and down about this super tax concession changes.
80,000 people are affected by that.
And the absolute extreme response from parts of the media and different commentators. Like, I took a lot of the speech as a rebuke about that. Like, you were talking about budget reform, repair. We're talking about why bold things can't happen. We suggest a very moderate closing of a significant loophole for very rich people, and you all run around like your hair's on fire. So I took it a bit as a rebuke to that sort of reaction, sort of to all the things that David was saying about how you can't club ideas on the head before they've even had time to germinate, or we won't move forward. But I saw it more in the context of the super changes. I also...
Can I just jump in there for one teeny second?
Yeah.
Because you've touched on something that I think is really interesting. I thought that the sort of hysterical reaction about the super changes, Jesse, that you also observed, I wondered if it was so over the top about a change that is so modest and affects so few, that I thought it's almost like they've said, we will fight to the death on this hill, and because we'll probably lose, but it'll make them so allergic to reform that they won't have the courage to come to the next hill.
There are two ways of looking at it. There's a generous way of I'm going to push back really hard on this so they don't try again, or there's the other view, which is there hasn't been significant reform, and this is really the only one they've gone with, so we can only attack that.
Can I just jump in as well for a sec? Sorry, Jessie, to finish your full thought. Right. But David, what was that figure you mentioned? 8,000?
80.
80,000.
80,000 people. I don't know if the government had brought out that figure at the start.
That's where I got it from, to be fair.
They did. Had they done that right? It felt like it got lost in the conversation because it kind of
got lost when you were on the beach in Indonesia. But here in Australia, those of us in the cold climes of Melbourne, we heard it, mate. We heard it.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Oh, it was at the beaches of Indonesia. Actually, I stormed the beaches of Indonesia. But I mean, I just felt like that Jim Chalmers or whoever made the announcement at the start should have made that a lot more pronounced. Perhaps he could have said, "And I'm going to name all 80,000 now." So stick with me. Agnes Henderson from 27 Macaulay Road, Ascot Vale. It's like Penderhurst. Like just do it. So everyone
the third.
Today, Labor is announcing a slight inconvenience for filthy rich people, and they go, unbelievable. And it reminds me of the mineral and resources rent tax in the sense that there are just a lot of vested interests lined up with machetes ready to kill the first smell of an economic reform.
Which is actually why they've been outlawed in Victoria, the machete. It's for the reason that David just said.
Good point.
Very good.
And because we have a strong state government that's tough on crime.
Sorry, Jessie, you were saying.
So this is the context in which I think that he's responding to completely reasonably. I do think one of the key lines I took out is we are open to reform. We are open to acting beyond what we committed the election if it is broadly supported. And I think that is a fair caveat on everything that's going to be said over the next little while. And it will be interesting to see, and I think a test of the federal government, as to where they draw the line as broad support. What do they consider broad support? How much of a fight are they prepared to have? And is the AFR losing their heads enough to consider something not to be broad support? Or is it public opinion polls? So I thought that was a very important line in everything he said. David can cast a lot of that as we're bringing people with us. We want to do this in a consensus way. I took a slightly more cynical take that there was an underlying threat there that you're going to jump up and down about changes. We're not going to do them. So support it or you're not getting any. The last thing I would say is I'm interested to know how the Liberal Party is going to engage in this debate, particularly because one of the overarching criticisms of their campaign is that they completely ceded the ground on the economy. That has been the overarching view within the Liberal Party and sort of without it. I didn't think it could happen, but they have entirely ceded the ground on this space. Their decisions about how they engage in these economic debates will be the start of the rebuild there. I am interested with the return of Tim Wilson, with the elevation of Bragg, how that is actually going to play out and whether they're going to go for hysterics or whether they're going to try and reclaim the economic narrative from the Labor Party.
Can I just observe something else going on here, and that is that it was a significant speech at a significant moment for the government, and it was delivered by the Treasurer. And I think that's worth noting as well. As you know, all policy arguments and discussions of consequence ultimately lead back to defence. And so I just wanted to make this observation, and that is in the immediate aftermath of the federal election, this country had a significant conversation about defence policy. And I just think it's interesting. And, the papers were full of it. The TVs were full of it. Richard Marles as Deputy Prime Minister and Anthony Albanese as Prime Minister found themselves answering question after question at press conferences about it. It got wrapped up in why won't Albo go and see Trump? We hear a rumour that Trump's going to be at the local fair. Quick, Albo, go to the local fair. There's talk that Trump might be in Dubai. Quick, Albo, get on a plane, go to Dubai, see if you can meet him at the airport. I mean, it got breathless and absurd. But it was all tied into this defence debate. And I thought, how interesting that there's a defence debate of consequence in this country after the election. I mean, it's proof, isn't it, that there was all of this, material lying around in the forest and the Liberals during the election campaign could not light it, could they? They couldn't run around and trigger a conversation that everyone else really wanted to have, and they had it anyway after the election.
And yet they were prepared to spend, what was it, $3 billion or something on
$21 billion.
Yeah, right, $21 billion
on things that they couldn't name. Don't get me back there.
It was a black hole.
We don't know where the money's coming from. We can't tell you what we're spending it on, but it's proof that we take defence seriously. No, actually, Liberal Party, it isn't. But anyway, and so the media really did get themselves in a little bit of a tiz about this, and it was ridiculous how they were trying to pressure Albo into, dropping everything and seeing Trump immediately. And
to be fair, there was the announcement of the review of AUKUS. Like, that did play somewhat into it.
It did, absolutely did. And I just think the federal Labor government, it showed itself, it didn't lose its proverbial while everyone in the media got very excited. Donald Trump has now shown that meeting with him, particularly in the Oval Office, is a high-risk, low-reward adventure for leaders around the world. And anyone who's unclear about that can check in with Zelensky or Ramaphosa of South Africa. Australia has got the lowest imposts that America is offering anybody. Why have a meeting with Donald Trump and risk it all?
When I saw that he was leaving the G7 early, I was like, best outcome for Albo. Brilliant. He doesn't have to meet with him. There's a good reason why he didn't, and he's not going to pop his head up to have it lopped off for no good reason. There is nothing good that's going to come out of this meeting.
The G7 issue a statement calling on Israel to de-escalate in Iran. Trump refuses to sign it, and why the hell would he? Ridiculous. 7 leaders in Canada telling Israel how to fight for its life. So he says, well, you guys sit here and you write all the communiques you like. I'm going back to the Situation Room to sort it out. I thought that was entirely explicable.
I thought that worked out quite. To Jesse's point, I agree. I think it worked out quite well for Albo. He went there. He was adjacent to the G7. If you jag a meeting, you jag a meeting. If you don't, you don't. But at least I made an attempt, so that came out quite well, and didn't have to do that. But then more broadly, just the relevancy of various actors in the world right now, particularly Europe, who are having meetings with the Iranians to try, which is just completely irrelevant. Like, it's like in a negotiation for, an NUS quota, and it's 2 groups talking to each other. None of them have votes. Why even reporting on it? Just like, well, what are we going to? How are we going to control the national executive? Well, I think we should do this. Well, actually, none of us have any votes. So why are we having this conversation? Like literally, Israel, the United States, and Iran. They're the people that need to be in the room talking. And I just find it fascinating how everyone else is all trying to be, what implications can we have? To the point I'm getting there is then the decision by Albanese to for the government to make an announcement during the week, and everyone's losing their shit over it. Well, certainly on Twitter anyway, on my Twitter feed.
About backing the strikes.
Yeah, and I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's completely irrelevant whether we.
I don't think it's
it's
not unreasonable to see what our position is, especially because we have moved positions on some significant issues in the Middle East at the UN of late. I don't think it's unreasonable for journalists just to see where we are.
Well, what's Australia's position on the civil war in Sudan?
Honestly, do you not think that you would be interested as to what our position on Iran is?
I'm very interested, but I think Stephen's point's well made, and that is that this is performative foreign affairs.
Yeah.
This isn't real foreign affairs.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
This is foreign affairs where you stand up and issue a statement about an international happening purely for the purposes of your domestic audience.
Yes.
It's got nothing to do with the national interest or what's going on in the world.
No, since when has that been not how we've performed a lot of foreign affairs? This is a new dynamic that apparently we don't have to care about the domestic view.
You pursue your national interests on the international stage. You don't stand on the international stage and try and speak to, 10 people back in Australia whose vote you're hoping to stitch
I feel like we spent most of the federal campaign, you and I, David, arguing about the impact of Trump and how important it was. And we get out of the other side and suddenly we don't even have to talk about foreign affairs. Like, it's unimportant.
But we are. Here we are.
I think this has been a 180 and I'm not happy about it.
Well, I mean, it is an example, isn't it, of the Trump obsession, how the media became obsessed with whether Albo was going to meet with Trump. I mean, if and when a meeting happens between Trump and Albo, and Trump doesn't even mention the 3.5% of defence spending, the media are going to die of disappointment. I mean,
let's face it, the media mostly just want him to speak not unreasonably about the 2 journalists that were shot in LA. That is part of their whole shot with rubber bullets by the National Guard. That is part of their push. They are somewhat convinced of them being the most important people on the planet.
They are. Yes, that's fair.
So, Iran. And we are going to...
Well, I think it starts with Alexander the Great's demolition of the Persian Empire.
Okay, I will note that we're recording this on a Tuesday lunchtime. Everything we're talking about now may become completely irrelevant by the time we publish the podcast on Friday morning, such that it's changing. Like this morning, I woke up to read that Donald Trump on Truth Social had said that there's been a ceasefire and he stepped it out over the next 12 hours, how it's going to work. Before we started recording, I jumped online and there's now reports from the Iranians saying we haven't agreed to that at all. Who knows what the hell's going on?
There's no official deal, but we'll stop attacks if Israel does, says Iran. They're stumbling their way towards a ceasefire.
It certainly appears that way, doesn't it? I'm interested to get your take on the military operation that was conducted over the weekend or whenever the hell it was by the United States. They obviously brought those B-2 bombers in, tried to take out the Frodo.
It is not Lord of the Rings, Stephen.
But I thought you'd love it.
They used Frodo to take out Mount Doom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they certainly had a crack at Mount Doom anyway. And then from that...
Does this make Donald Trump Gollum? Is that how this works? Because in the end, he gets rid of the ring?
Good question. Maybe he's Gandalf.
Well, I think that Iran think their potential nuclear deterrent is their precious. Anyway.
Let's hang on to this. This metaphor is going to get tortured.
It's going to be really hard because
I've only seen the films once. I'm not that good at it. Jessie, she mainlines this stuff, so she'll be. You two can do a whole hour on this if you like. But I guess my question to you, David, is the US one and done on this one, to bring a basketball or a US sporting analogy back into this conversation?
I think so. I think that judging on where things stand right now and what the likely trajectory is, yes, I think that's how it looks. I mean, I guess from the military perspective, Israel really had laid this all out before the United States. Like Iran's integrated air defense system had been destroyed. Its capacity to interfere with Israeli or American air power had been, it appears to have been completely annihilated. The airspace over Iran is controlled by its adversaries. And so in that environment, the opportunity for the United States to deploy its ordnance and finish the destruction of these nuclear facilities just appeared to be sort of too good for Donald Trump to pass up. And I guess it's and it of course seems to have gone that way. One night, one operation, 125 airframes involved, and if you believe the United States, they've struck those facilities without any cost to themselves and destroyed them. I guess there's a sort of an argument, a boutique argument going on in amongst some about the sort of international legal implications of the United States conducting a unilateral strike on the sort of grounds of it being a clear and present threat to the United States and its allies, particularly Israel, of course. That it's pretty obvious why Israel is threatened. I mean, Iran has in its constitution a commitment to destroy Israel, and so it acquiring nuclear weapons and staying faithful to its own constitution does represent something of a problem for Israel. It represents something of a problem for the rest of us because in contrast to every other rogue state that's acquired nuclear weapons, I think we can all have a creeping anxiety that Iran really would use them or might put one into the hands of people who would use them, given that so many of their proxies are Islamic death cults who preach with glee the destruction of their enemies and death of their own citizenry. So it's all very grim. And I guess for international law, the United States might respond by saying, well, this is why superpowers have militaries. And while you can tie yourself up in an international courtroom trying to charge Israel with genocide, we're going to get on with the job of ruthlessly prosecuting our own international interests.
So I'm about to say something that neither of you are going to be constructive about and wholly outraged. I'm going to take this from...
You better be good. With a run-up like that, it's going to have to be good.
I probably hang out on different parts of the internet than both of you. My view right now, and I know it's not the most important one, there does need to be some thought given to the narrative.
There's nothing wrong with Antiques Roadshow. You shouldn't be embarrassed, Jessie.
There needs to be something done about the narrative that is permeating millennials and younger right now about what's happening in Iran and what is happening in the Middle East. I think that there's been a fair bit of ground lost since October 7 when it comes to the global narrative about the Middle East, and it is only getting reinforced right now. There is a lot of memes that I'm seeing about how this is just Iraq. They've been so lazy that they've just changed the letter. The amount of defense of Iran amongst some of the people that I'm friends with on social media has been quite shocking to me to some extent. And I think that if nothing else that the Labor Party should be propagating right now, if David doesn't think indeed their views on international relations should even be broadcast, is some explanation about why Australia does support the strikes. Because right now, equivocation and that sort of question mark about where we stand in the Middle East, I think is only going to allow mass misinformation to fester amongst a group of people who will one day run the country. And I think that is a concern, and I think someone needs to start thinking about how that's done, because I do wonder about, as I said, the amount of defence of Iran that I have seen from people in the Labor movement.
Yeah, well, that's perhaps not surprising, but still surprising. I mean, the federal Labor's position here has not been clear and unequivocal, though, has it? I mean, in the days leading up to the US intervention,
Tanya Plibersek was pretty unequivocal.
Our official position was calling for de-escalation.
Yeah,
which is just such a mindless thing to call for when the two parties have just started a war, and they're they're going to suddenly say, "Well, hang on a minute, Australia says de-escalate." So, but anyway, that was the Australian position, and then in the immediate aftermath of the US strike, Australia's position was to support the US strike. So, it's another example where the federal government's position is its coherence and logic is not apparent to me. It's stupefying, isn't it? I mean, the Iranian regime's principal occupation is the oppression of its own people. It's a country which very recently had to ruthlessly suppress a movement led by its own women, calling for freedoms. Women were being imprisoned for dancing for 10 years. A young woman was arrested and murdered by the police because she was not wearing her headscarf. This kind of conduct is unthinkable. And how any left of centre or progressive person could spend a moment's time supporting it is beyond me. I mean, if you support women's rights, if you support the rights of LGBTI, if you support trade unions and the right to organise, if you support any of the testament sort of cornerstone issues of our movement, then you should have no truck with Iran.
And I would say that argument, unfortunately, has not been persuasive. And I think that, like, for instance, there has been a lot of pushback around any Republican calling for freedom for women in Iran because they look at what some of the Republican Party are doing to women in America and they broadly see hypocrisy.
They see a crocodile calling for.
Indeed. And I think that there needs to be some thought given to the arguments that are being had. And I agree with everything you've said, David, but they are clearly not persuading a group of people, and we need to work out how to do that.
Well, I feel like the sort of Gaza movement has just seamlessly shifted into being sort of a defend the Iranian regime movement, and is kind of morphing into a movement which is just going to oppose everything Israel does, for better or for worse.
Sadly, I think that is the case. Anyway, that was depressing.
Everyone needs a hobby, I guess.
Well, I want to before we go to our final topic, which is the Victorian Libs, which won't be depressing. The most recent tweet.
Speaking of hopelessly divided.
Yeah, I know. The recent tweet from Donald Trump. Donald Trump's on a heater right now, I've got to admit. Whether you like the bloke or not, communication-wise, he's on an absolute heater. Like the last tweet, which was quite long, in caps lock, congratulations to everyone. Like, this was beautiful. And it ends with this. And you can just see
the most important alliance ever. I was thinking,
it should be called the 12-Day War. And then he finishes it off by God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, God bless the United States, and then in caps lock, God bless the world. Like, he was sitting around, in a really comfy chair, just rehashing this, going, who do we do? What do we do? God bless Israel? Yeah, God bless Israel. God bless Iran? Why not? Why not? Put that one in too. Hell, God bless the world. Let's just God bless everyone. God bless the universe.
While mocking Donald Trump is a noble profession and we should continue to do it, it's just interesting to note, it wasn't he didn't get involved in a quagmire. He managed to resist the call for regime change. Mm-hmm. He managed to dismiss any notion that US forces would go in on the ground. When people look back on, with hindsight, on how the US should have conducted itself in Afghanistan and how the US made such a terrible mistake going into Iraq, it does seem, unhappy as it is, that Donald Trump and those around him have learned some of those lessons. They've had a strategic strike, realised a decades-old US policy ambition of stopping Iran from acquiring the bomb, and then got out. So if that is how the story ends, it will be a foreign policy success for Trump, delivered in his usual primitive, inelegant, barbaric way.
Okay, let's and to be clear, I actually I wasn't really mocking the president there. I actually did think that his communication was, in his own way, to the point that you've just made there, David. If you saw it live,
his press conference where he had JD Vance, the Secretary of State and the Secretary for Defence behind him, it looked like a poor man's Marvels.
Don't you reckon, though, that they brought them in there to say, you're going to own this with me? I thought that was quite instructive what Trump did. He said, you're going to come with me, because there might have been a couple there that would have been like, not 100% convinced of this.
Everyone from the group chat. Bring the journalist.
Yeah.
Everyone that was there.
Yeah, I thought
it was on WhatsApp. If you were following the conversation on WhatsApp,
you should get to the press conference.
It's compulsory attendance. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, before we wrap up, let's talk about the Victorian Libs. There was an article in the AFR that came out. When did this come out, Jessie? Start of the month, by Victorian State Rounds reporter Samaya Ibn, and it is a long read, but it's a great read. And it basically, Jessie, do you want to it's titled Bunch of Losers, What Victorian Liberals Think About Their Party. Jessie, do you want to give us a bit of the cliff notes of this, and then we can dive a bit more?
I don't think I could do it justice. I think it is the Liberal Party by their own mouths. It is it's an astounding read. The reason I have read it is I missed it. I was probably away somewhere, and I was talking to a journalist, and I said to them, I think that I have more optimism that the Liberal Party can pull themselves together than you do. And he said, that's because you don't talk to them. Like, honestly, these people are completely lost. And the more you talk to them, the worse it gets. Here, read this article. This isn't even the half of it. There are some incredible quotes in there. I reflected that the Labor Party, and I do this every time we talk about the Liberal Party, we've had our own woes, we've had our own challenges. I don't think I've seen anything quite like this. come out in the media. Certainly seen WhatsApp groups that are not entirely a world away from the language used in here. But like even some of the quotes about, if we're going to win, we've got to shoot some of our own people, and then qualifying, I don't mean with real guns, I mean politically, just we've got to put bullets in them.
Although the qualification was priceless.
It was just...
There are so many pull quotes that you could use for a negative campaign either now or at election time. One of them, if you can't govern yourselves, you can't be expected to govern the state, is one of them. We're losers. We're the losing losers that lose. We're a shit show. A third of the caucus spoke to the paper off the record for this column. A third. Do you remember when the whole split in the right happened in Victoria, the Victorian Labor Party? I thought that
do you mean the split of 2008 or 2009 or 2010?
All of them condensed. I just thought that I never thought it could get as bad as that, right? This is worse. I was already going, I've seen this before, but this is terrible. And I'm loving every bit of it.
It is so bad.
There's a couple of interesting things that have happened and things will change before the podcast is released. It's as fast moving as the issue in Tehran. Like the John Pizzuto has now been backed in. They've loaned him the money. He's staying in Parliament. But even
they've loaned him the money on commercial terms. I noticed. Like, what? This poor bastard's going to be doing the dishes at Liberal Party meetings to try and pay this off.
Yeah, and some of them are running around on background saying, well, he hasn't been prepared to sell his house. Is he even legit about this bankruptcy thing? Anyway, so that has happened. But even in Moira Deeming's negotiation, ill-fated as it was and completely ham-fisted around her role in it and what she would ask for, she asked that Brad Batten not be challenged as part of her negotiation. Nothing says secure leadership like someone wandering in and making it a precondition of a legal settlement. Like
Batten she's in the Legislative Council trying to explain on Hansard on the public record why demanding her pre-selection as part of this was not blackmail. It's like, oh my God.
Like IBAC need to look at all of this. It's proper corruption. Yeah.
But they are not putting any pressure on the state government, are they? And
no.
That's okay by me. But
Batten has declared it's over. He has wandered around telling everyone the war is over now. And I think that's how you end them. You just say it. You just say that it's not happening anymore and everyone just sort of falls into line. I think that's a smart way forward.
Well, it worked for Donald Trump. He told everyone there was a ceasefire when there wasn't one, and now there's going to be a ceasefire.
While all this is happening, Deputy Liberal Leader Sam Groth decides to use taxpayer-funded monies to use a car to get him home from the tennis, and a whole bunch of other questions around that as well, just to double down. It's just a story.
And did you see the Liberal Deputy Leader whose car he borrowed, did not cover for him for an instant? She almost drove him to the police station and handed him over.
Yeah, I will say 4 months after it happened, she finally jumped up and down when it became clear that it was going to become public that she had given her car when she wasn't supposed to someone else. There was a little, protest too much.
Well, she was trying to make up in enthusiasm.
She really was. So the other dynamic playing out here, which is interesting, is for the Labor government, they do not have to do much to poke this hornet's nest. Any democracy empowerment files that they have that they can give to a journalist right now, everyone else in the Liberal Party will jump on with all of their other democracy empowerment unit information about their own side. It's not going to take much at all.
Well, and I was watching the telly last night and the latest kind of cycle and the state round is all about the Liberals. The state government cannot get an announcement up, and that's okay. And I was the journos are really interested in this. They are not done with this story. And so you've got Batten up there saying there's nothing to see here. It's like watching a Democrat politician in LA insist that it's a peaceful march. And there's nothing to see here. Everything's going to be fine. And then you've got the former leader with a smile sticky taped to his face being told that he owes the Liberal Party $1.5 million on commercial terms and they've done him a favour. Thanks for the favour.
The story is the person that is winning out of all this is Matthew Guy.
I was
He
about to say,
died. Mark 3, 2026.
yep. And
Not even he can lose as big next time as he did last time.
Oh no, but Jeff Kennett is in his ear saying, "I won on my third crack, Matt. You can too."
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about just quickly is I'm glad Albo went and saw the Pope because he got so much shit in his first term about doing overseas travel for work that he could actually this time.
He deserved a holiday. Is that what?
Yeah, basically, I'm basically saying
the Pope is not a holiday. You heretic.
Good on him. Absolutely. If I'd been the Prime Minister, I would have went and saw the Pope, would have swung past Celtic Park, maybe took in a game, headed over to Fenway, catch a homestand by the Sox. Absolutely do a victory lap and just give the middle finger to the media and the libs.
If you were the Prime Minister when the Pope died, you would have paused the election, tried to get it moved, and gone over to the funeral.
Yeah, absolutely. 12 days of mourning. I'd make everyone wear black.
Oh, well, it's like Iran.
Well, hey, might get the hard left on side then.
Well, I was just going to say, Jessie, thank you very much for coming on to the show previously known as the Feeney Files. I'm going through my mail trying to find the letter from Stephen where he advises me that I need a co-star to rescue the ratings of this program. But I can't find it. It's like he never mentioned it. I just arrived on set and the show had been completely rebranded.
But you had a new microphone.
It's humiliating.
David, you'll find that email in amongst all the run sheets that I send you that you never read.
Do you send out run sheets?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, it's a thing. Jessie McCrone, thank you so much for your time on today's episode.
Of the Feeney Files, anytime. I'm more than happy to come and support
with Jessie McCrone and David Feeney. Thank you so much for your time on today's episode.
And thanks for coming on my show, Stephen.
Hey, Social Democrats. Thanks for listening. Today's episode was hosted by myself, Stephen Donnelly, and produced by Grace Eyre. If you like the show, please rate us and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, get all the latest updates and bonus content by following Socially Democratic on our social media channels. The links are in our show notes. See you next Friday.